Today on the Pro-Life podcast, I'm not sure how to adequately describe the weird we're about to discuss. 3-parent children genetically, and Canada bumping off the poor. It feels made up. We have the stories to prove it. We need to talk about this. Let's get started. Happy Thursday, Pro-Life family. Pull up your chair. Hope you had a great Mother's Day weekend. You survived, right?
Yeah, how are y'all feeling about all the yay mom energy we got in our email inboxes?
Are
y'all okay?
So much.
Yeah. You know, I really did have to do some soul searching and check and make sure that all the yay mom energy did match up with my vibe, but we were cool. It was fine.
That's great.
If you didn't watch last week, you don't know what we're talking about. Just watch the previous episode. It's
Wow.
pretty ridiculous. Speaking of ridiculous, we have some ridiculous topics today. This stuff, these headlines made me go, did I really just read what I think I read? But before we get into that, ladies, if you would introduce yourselves.
Yes. Kim Schwartz, Director of Media and Communication.
Bailey Sunbeck, Development Associate.
Brent Klinger, an IT Director and nerd guy. Okay. So this one's in the news. It came across my TikTok. Yes, I'm hip with the kids, and I got the TikToks, right?
You have to. You're the technology guy. You have to know.
Well, yeah, kind of. Like, you kind of want to know, what are my kids looking at, and what are they... Not all of my kids do this, because they're not old enough for that, but of those that are. Anyways. So the news has been kind of lit up with a baby in the UK has been born having a third genetic parent. And that was one of those article moments where I went, did I just read the premise of a new Star Trek movie?
Right. Is this the Babylon Bee again?
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Gosh, well, the other story we're talking about, we haven't gotten to that one, and I was like, this is the bee, right?
Mm-mm.
No, it's not. We'll get there in a minute.
Yeah.
So this process, and I Googled it, I'm like, I have to understand this better, because the video I saw on my feed was talking about, so you have the genetic material of the two parents, right? You have basic biology. I don't know how far in biology you may have gotten or what kind of grade you got, but you have a sperm and you have an egg. They come together, they form this new person. So 99.8% of your DNA is in the nucleus of that egg cell that is now fertilized. The other 0.2% is mitochondrial DNA. And that comes exclusively from the mom and can pass on some unfortunate genetic conditions you may develop later in life. And I had to look up, what is a mitochondrial genetic? Like, what are these things? Like, type 1 diabetes, Alzheimer's can cause this, epilepsy can be a thing. So these are some serious problems that we want to avoid. And I was like, okay, cool. Maybe we found a way to do something about this. Logically, you would want to if you could, if you could not pass on.
Sounds like a good result.
Like, if you have epilepsy, you don't want to potentially pass that to your child. Okay, how to do this? Well, we take a donor mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell.
Dang straight.
And the fertilized nucleus. Well, what they didn't cover in this video, and what I found since, and Life News had a clearer article on the ethical issues here. These are both fertilized eggs. So we're taking the nucleus from the parents that's of this fertilized egg, and we're taking the donor egg, and we're pulling the nucleus out of it, which I don't know if you followed enough biology. If you pull the nucleus out of a cell, it's dead. It's gonna die. And they're taking the, for lack of a better term, wanted nucleus and putting it into the other egg cell. So you have healthy mitochondria, healthy mitochondrial DNA with the parental DNA of the parenting
hair color, eye color, all
Hair
the
co-
like
you're right.
normal DNA that you would
the normal
expect.
stuff,
Yeah.
but there are conditions that can arise with your mitochondria having some genetic anomalies and being unhealthy. This is complicated. I'll share it because there's articles. I found articles in the Guardian. This was a secular headline. This is what came up in WUSF Public Media. I'm not sure. Is that San Francisco Public Media? I don't know. Public media article, and like the sub headline on it was like, critics warn that tweaking the genetic code this way could be the slippery slope that leads to designer babies.
Yeah.
Kinda, possibly.
Every bad sci-fi, or not even necessarily bad sci-fi movie, every sci-fi movie starts out with a good intention and then ends up with a slew of unintended consequences.
This is true. Even the Guardian article has a little graph of like the two little cells, and they put the note on there, donor fertilized egg. But I think we could even back up further. This is an IVF procedure.
Yeah.
So that's got its own slew of complicated issues we've talked about in many episodes. And now, so we've got a donated fertilized egg.
We've created this human being. A fertilized egg is a human being. Sperm meets egg, that is a new, unique individual who has never existed before, will never exist again, is unique and unrepeatable. And the fact, first of all, that this person has been created specifically just to be used, to be used for this mitochondria. Like, that's wrong. Second of all, you're killing that person and then taking the other, the nucleus DNA and putting it into this new human being. And so now, again, you result in a 3-parent embryo, a 3-parent person. You had to kill another person in order to get that result. And like we said, like, it is a good idea to want to limit human suffering. It is a good idea to want to cure diseases and make people have abundant life. That's what we're made for. You don't get there through evil actions such as killing another person. You know, science always has to exist within the ethical boundaries. Otherwise, you get into terrible human atrocities that we've seen throughout history, and yet we still think like, oh, well, this time it'll be different. No, don't go there.
Yeah.
So we're taking 2 people at the 1 cell level and doing organ donation.
Complete 100%
organ donation.
Yeah.
Like, one of these people is going to die here, and you know, most IVF processes require multiple fertilized eggs, multiple implantation, and then there's always the selective harvesting and things. Yeah. So many ethical concerns here. So the Guardian article has the little diagram of like fertilized egg A, fertilized egg B. We're going to pull this one apart and this one apart and take this stuff and shove it in the other one. And then you've got this donor egg with healthy mitochondria and the parent's nuclear material placed in the donor egg. If you're having trouble following, and I know it is, this is one of the weirder things we have talked about here. I mean, until we started talking, third genetic parent, like brain dead pregnant women, I think took the cake for the weirdest.
We're getting there. We challenge ourselves every week.
This is not the bee.
Right.
This is the Guardian. This happened in the UK. They've legalized this treatment.
Yeah, we're talking about slippery slopes. So this is a great example of a slippery slope in a snapshot, because so you have the natural way to have a baby, which requires 2 people. Then you have IVF, which requires 3 people, 4 people maybe. I don't know how many scientists, laboratory people it takes to do that.
You got some more people involved.
More people. This requires like
the
6
whole
people.
gang.
I mean, it's interesting to see that progression
Mhm.
of like, wow, maybe it's not supposed to be this way.
Yeah,
Maybe this is actually hurting human life more than it's helping human life, you know?
exactly.
You know, I could see that there are some conditions that if you could choose not to pass this on,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's no 100% guarantee here.
Yeah.
And we've killed a person on the premise that it might work.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That's terrible. And all of this ultimately boils down, I believe, to humans' desire for control. We always want to have control over our circumstances, but God reminds us nothing is in our control.
No.
The gospel says, without me, you can do nothing. It's not just like, oh, without me, you can do less or you can do some things. Like, we don't have control over anything. God is ultimately the creator of life. He has the say over our lives, and we're not in the position to be able to choose, which humans can live or die. We don't have the position to say, especially whenever it means like severe ethical problems like this 3-parent IVF, we don't have the authority to say like, well, my child is never going to get sick. Nothing bad is going to ever happen to my child because I'm going to do all of these things. And it's whenever we are grasping at that control instead of surrendering everything to God that we end up in very poor circumstances, that we cause more human suffering than what we would have done if we had just like, let God be God.
Well, and it's not to say that, situations can be hard and maybe there is a very real anxiety of people who don't want to pass things on to their kids. And that's understandable.
Right. Yes.
We're not saying like, get over it, trust God. Like,
yeah.
It's just God designed us so intentionally.
Yes.
And there is that beautiful natural process that now we've taken all the way down the line to you sort of have 4 parents.
Right.
Ha-ha,
You can pick and choose.
Yeah, like we're not talking. Okay, there's 3 genetic parents. There's a 4th guy somewhere in this chain too. If you biology. Okay. I mean, I've got family with diabetes, like, and none of us want we don't want to pass that on.
Yeah.
On my side of the family, there's some people, my wife's side of the family, and you don't want to pass that on potentially to kids, but I don't think it would ever cross my mind. You know what we should do? We should kill this other kid so our kids don't get these issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, and imagine growing up knowing, I know, I'm sure maybe there's 1 or 2 people listening to this that are like, I only see the big deal guys. Like it's not that big of a deal. Like it's literally a petri dish.
Mm-hmm.
But like, just think about growing up and learning that you could not be, I guess, your like optimal healthy self without the sacrifice of this other human. And 2, like there are parents out there that you are connected to, maybe in a very small way, but you are.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's how it works, right?
Yes.
Can I challenge the term sacrifice on that? Sacrifice implies willingly.
Oh.
Yeah, that is true. Thank
It's
you
more,
for that.
It's more of a robbery and a murder.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that is true.
That's heartbreaking.
Thank you for the correction.
I mean, we do call it kind of, it's sacrifice in the sense of sacrificing children to gods, as some cultures did in the Bible. But there's nothing sacrificially beautiful of I'm giving this thing up to help somebody else.
Right.
It's a forceful taking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do believe that science can get to that end result where we can, solve these problems of severe illnesses that we don't want to pass on to our children.
Yeah.
Right.
But we can do that without these ethical problems and, taking advantage of smaller, weaker people in order to, have survival of the fittest. We don't need to do that. That, God has created every human person with, in his image and likeness, and that whenever we honor that, everything else, flows together, that we don't have to take advantage of other people.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some other things that have happened in the last couple of weeks. There was synthetic proteins have been created that can be used in the body. And I mean, another slippery slope of weird things you might accidentally create. But it's like technology is advancing to do some cool things where we don't have to kill people to get the good thing done.
Yeah, and
Ideally.
your babies, your future children are not some like, it's not like building a house and picking tile and picking floors and
Right?
I want this
Right.
roof. Like, no, these are people. They have dignity. And yeah, sure, maybe we figured out a way to do some cool thing in a petri dish, but like, I just have, God have mercy on us. Like,
There's a gap between
for-
can and should.
yes,
Mhm.
exactly. It freaks me out a little bit. I'm not gonna lie.
It does. It does. There's well, it's almost as weird as maybe getting a text message that your bank account is overdrawn. Why don't you just kill yourself?
I mean, that's basically the direction Canada's going.
So
almost.
this is a weird transition, but we'll get to that in just a minute after this break. Texas Right to Life is facing 14 lawsuits from Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry. They're suing us because we helped pass the Texas Heartbeat Act, and they're trying to scare us pro-lifers into backing down. Please join us in the fight against Planned Parenthood and donate to protect the Texas Heartbeat Act. You can fight for the unborn and build a pro-life Texas that values every human life. Go to texasrighttolife.com/lawsuit to make your contribution. Every cent will help, and it's greatly appreciated.
Without warning, you or your loved one could end up in the emergency room where every second counts and your medical wishes matter more than ever. However, if your loved one doesn't have the right medical documents on hand, they may not be able to make decisions for you in a crisis. My Life Angels solves all of this by walking you through step by step in creating these important medical documents and storing them online securely for you and your family to access at any time. The service is only $7 a month, but use the link in our description for 20% off your initial subscription period. Don't let strangers make life and death decisions for you. Get the My Life Angels app today.
Welcome back, friends. Have you had enough weird? Welcome back. Kim read this headline and I'm like, this is not the bee.
Right.
Canada is euthanizing its poor, but these bioethicists think that that's the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
This sounds like a bee article, but it's on Not the Bee. We'll put the link in the description.
Yeah.
What?
Canada needs to stop. We've talked before about their assisted suicide program and how, again, we're going to the slippery slope, how it always starts with like, oh, well, this is just for people who have severe terminal illnesses. It is the worst possible condition. They only have a few months to live. And so we're just going to let them go ahead and end their lives. And it'll be peaceful and fine, and it'll be a good death. That's how it always starts. And because we're compassionate, like people are generally compassionate, they're moved by that. And they're like, yes, we do want people to have a peaceful death. That's what we all should want, is a peaceful death. But that is never, ever, ever where assisted suicide stops. Even if that was where it stopped, that would still be immoral because we don't have that authority to take our own lives. That is a gift from God. And so going forward, you've seen how assisted suicide starts there and then it envelops more and more people. More and more people fall into like, well, okay, if you have this situation, then you can have assisted suicide. Well, if you have this situation, then you can have assisted suicide. And Canada has actually gotten to the point where there are people who are too poor to live with their condition. That's not necessarily life-threatening, but they choose assisted suicide, or the government pushes assisted suicide on them.
Right.
And that's what happened with this woman in Canada. She goes by the name of Sophia because she's already passed away. And she left this video before she died saying that she had tried for years to find housing that would be accommodating to her medical condition. She had some severe complications with chemicals, basically. So anything that might have cigarette smoke in it or chemical cleaners, she couldn't live in an environment with those things. So she tried for years trying to find a place that wouldn't have those. And she petitioned local government. She petitioned like anybody who could help. And nobody came to her aid. And so finally, she filmed this video, and I want to read actually her quote.
This story just feels made up. This is like dystopian future sci-fi, which seems to be the vibe today.
Yes.
It's just bizarre sci-fi movies gone wrong.
Yeah. So she said in the video, the government sees me as expendable trash, a complainer, useless, and a pain in the... Yes. That she said in the video. And I think people saw this and were just heartbroken over the fact that you have this woman who could have lived a healthy, beautiful life and simply needed help finding new housing. And instead, she fell into the category, she fell into the acceptable use of assisted suicide, and she killed herself earlier this year. And now you have these bioethicists saying, this is a tragic situation, but it's okay. Because you have these two situations where it's just lesser of two evils. Either she dies from assisted suicide, or she just can't find affordable housing. And it's like, well, what's the difference really?
These are the same. Like we could let you die, or you could just struggle to find housing some more. Like, what?
And so this bioethicist is arguing on that front and says to force people who are already in unjust social circumstances to have to wait until those social circumstances improve, or for the possibility of public charity but unreliably occurs when particularly distressing cases become public, is unacceptable. A harm reduction approach acknowledges that the recommended solution is necessarily an imperfect one, a lesser evil between two or more less ideal options.
Oh my gosh.
No.
Harm reduction approach?
I think that's the most harm that you could do, actually.
I mean, it's the same argument we're hearing from pro-abortion doctors and activists is instead of having the baby and giving it love, kill it.
Yeah.
And instead of helping this woman and showing her love and, doing the right thing, just kill her.
Yeah.
As if like killing is an option and it should never even be on the table.
Right. And you can see how she was heartbroken too, to like be kind of pushed to that situation that she really didn't want to kill herself. And other people around her kind of affirmed that and said, she really didn't want this assisted suicide. But once you put that option on the table, that's what people start pushing. And then you see the tragic loss of life here with Sophia. And, whenever you see the call, Jesus is called to care for the poor. And then you see the modern approach of, let's just get rid of the people who are poor. Let's just get rid of people who, we can use, like we talked about in the last segment, of creating an embryo in order to make this person healthy. We can get rid of this person in order to make this person healthy. We can get rid of this person in order for society to be healthier.
Yeah.
And that is not what we as a human family are supposed to do, because it's only a matter of time until one of us is that person where it's like, well, we could just get rid of you. And, you're going to have some problems with that if you're the one who says, well, why don't we just get rid of you?
Yeah, but seriously, think about that. That is the message we're sending to the poor, to the needy, to the elderly. Is if you're pregnant, get rid of your baby because you're poor. You shouldn't have a family. So toxic. If you're elderly and you don't have a family who can take care of you and you can't find the right housing, just die. It'll be better. Mm-hmm. Like that is not encouraging. That is not life-giving. That is awful. And those people deserve better. Mm-hmm. My heart breaks.
It makes me want to cry.
It's, to force people who are already in unjust social circumstances. Is this where social justice finally ends?
Right.
It's like, well, we couldn't fix it with our social justice warrioring, so we're just going to bump you off?
Especially with as far left Canada is. There were other stories in this article about how some people chose assisted suicide because their medical bills were going to be too high. And then you see isn't healthcare free in Canada? Like, obviously all of these, approaches all of these so-called fixes to alleviate these problems, they don't always alleviate these problems. And really the answer is the love of Christ. And we have to, and obviously that's going to take different forms. We're not just saying like, oh, if you love Christ, your medical bills are going to go away. Tragically, it doesn't always work. But really, like, we as the body of Christ are responsible for seeing Jesus in everyone, especially in the poor. That's who Jesus identified with. And that was so countercultural then. And you see now it's even more, I don't know if I want to say more countercultural. It's always countercultural to actually, reach out to the poor, to see that they are valuable, and that the last shall be first and the first shall be last.
Yeah. And going back to the whole slippery slope thing, if you don't think that the first story we read about the 3 parent embryos and how we treat life in the beginning doesn't inform how we treat life at the end, you need to take a closer look, because they do inform one another, and we need to treat all lives with dignity from the very beginning to the very end.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what your opinion is on what quality of life is, because that is there's so many different like qualities of life. Not every life looks the same, and not every person is happy with the same luxuries and material items.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
I'm sure originally Canada didn't justify it with, well, I mean, this will apply to poor people and sick people and people who just have some mental health issues. And it was like, I doubt that's how they justified it in the beginning, but this is where they're at now.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you're driving on the road and you see a homeless person under a bridge, I highly doubt the normal human would think to themselves, probably better if they're dead.
Yeah.
No, it'd be better if they were loved, if they were helped.
And they definitely don't think, it'd be great if the government helped them be dead.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Stop it, Canada.
Canada. Stop it.
Mm-hmm.
I love the maple syrup, but seriously?
Yeah.
What?
But here's what we can do to kind of be countercultural and oppose all of these toxic beliefs that we've discussed, from the 3 parent embryos and that desire for control, that the use and misuse of the poor, the abuse of the poor in Canada. I'm reminded of Mother Teresa, because she was just such a recent and loving example of how to show Christ's love to the poor. I was reading recently about how she got the call, how Jesus spoke to her to go and start her mission to serve the poorest of the poor. And it came through Christ's message, I thirst, whenever he was hanging on the cross. And she heard Jesus say to her that whenever he said, I thirst, he's thirsting for souls. He wants people to live with him, to be with him. And that includes the poor, people who are forgotten, who don't always hear Christ's message, who always hear these voices that say they're not wanted, who hear these voices that say it's better off if you were dead. And instead, they don't hear Christ's voice, who says, like, I want you and I love you and I want to be with you. Yeah. And so that's what we can do to be like Mother Teresa and go to them and say, Jesus loves you and he wants to be with you, and how just life-changing that is. And so, like, maybe you're not the kind of person who can go and bring sandwiches to homeless people who are on the street, but there are all kinds of people in our lives who are poor in a lot of different ways. There are people who are poor in love, who aren't getting that message that they know, like, yes, you are loved. There are people who are poor in attention and they need someone to just listen to them. There are people who are poor in time and they just need somebody to hang out with. Maybe they're alone and they're lonely. And so we can be generous. We should be generous in those ways to the people around us, and serve the poor in every possible way, even if it doesn't look the same as like what Mother Teresa did, cleaning the sores of lepers in Calcutta. Not all of us can do that, but I promise you there are people in your life who are poor in certain ways that you can serve them and show Christ's love to them.
Yeah. I found a couple of really powerful Mother Teresa quotes that I feel like just, summarize everything you just said. They're so amazing. This one is, Poverty doesn't only consist of being hungry for bread, but rather it is a tremendous hunger for human dignity.
Oh man,
Yeah.
ain't that the truth?
And it's like, I'm just thinking about both of the stories you talked about today of how like the government is putting zero value on this woman's life. The everyone involved in the 3-parent embryo process is not putting value on that one life that has been discarded. And we just have to remember that we don't get that intrinsic value from our parents or from the government. We get it from God. He breathes and speaks identity into our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And that is just a wonderful reminder
Absolutely.
when you read really sad things like this.
Yep.
Because when we try to define it, you end up with a line. It's like, well, where's the line? Well, I think it should be, about here. Well, what happens when you just fall just under?
Right.
Like, what? Who decides that line? Let's just decide value comes from God.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Done. Everyone has it because he gave it to us. So
It really is that
treat
simple.
everyone
Yeah.
accordingly.
Fair enough.
Doesn't sound that hard.
Nope. We can do it.
Can we wrap this up on a happier note?
Wait, I have one more Mother Teresa quote.
Ooh.
Okay.
It's really good.
Bring it on.
Good.
And then we can do another happy note, but this is also happy.
Okay.
Good. We need
Okay.
that.
Okay, so this one says, we think sometimes that poverty is only being hungry, naked, and homeless. The poverty of being unwanted, unloved, and uncared for is the greatest poverty. We must start in our own homes to remedy this kind of poverty.
Boom.
Mother Teresa.
Go, Mother Teresa.
That is incredible.
Exactly.
So true.
So you don't have to wait to serve the poor. You can do it. You can start in your own home. That's the best place to start.
Yeah.
It's a good place to start.
And then see how it affects the way you view everything else.
Yeah. It's a ripple effect.
Yeah.
Mhm. So, continuing upbeat notes. Last weekend was Mother's Day weekend. Everybody had good Mother's Days and
Yeah.
happy, fun times. You said there's more grandkids in the family
Yeah.
now.
Last Mother's Day, there were no grandbabies. This Mother's Day, there were 2 grandbabies. So
Wow.
my mom was
Nice.
just, she was in
Over the
heaven.
moon.
Yes.
Wow.
So we just all
Nice.
hung out.
we don't have more grandbabies. I mean, I got my mom a new fridge. I was really excited to see her face light up when she opened it.
Boo.
Is this a joke? Did you actually
That's
get her
the
a
dad
fridge?
joke. It's a dad
It's
joke.
a dad joke. It's a dad joke. I didn't get my mom a fridge.
His,
Yo.
his mom's going to be in the comments. He did not give me a fridge.
Yeah. Hi, Mom. Yeah. Sorry to make a dad joke at your expense today, but
Dad jokes are always
it's kind of
welcome.
funny. Tied into Mother's Day.
There we go.
Okay, friends. Well, it's been a weird ride today, but thanks for sticking through to the end. We appreciate you. We love you guys. These are going to be some weird conversations now with your friends about this. They're going to think you're making this stuff up. Point to the podcast. Tell them it's our fault. I'll accept that.
Yep.
Okay. Until next time, have those conversations, change some hearts and minds, and this is how we'll save some lives. We'll see you guys next time.